أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وربيع نفوسنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم ولعن عدوهم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا رسول الله صلى الله عليك يا حبيب الله. Peace and blessings be upon you, Ya Rasulullah. Peace and blessings be upon you, Ya Habib Allah, O beloved of Allah. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي وابن مولاي يا أبا عبد الله الحسين. Peace and blessings be upon you, يا أبا عبد الله الحسين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي ومولى المؤمنين يا أمير المؤمنين ويا قائد الغر المحجلين ويا إمام المتقين. Peace and blessings be upon you, O Master of the believers, O Prince of believers, O Imam, the divine leader of the righteous, the muttaqeen. Assalamu alayka ya Abal Hasnain. Assalamu alayka ya نفس رسول الله. السلام عليك يا نفس رسول الله. السلام عليك يا داحي باب خيبر. Peace and blessings be upon you, O the father of Al-Hasanain. Peace and blessings be upon you, O you who was known to be the self of Rasulullah. Peace and blessings be upon you, O you who destroyed Khaybar with his bare hands. Assalamu alayka ya Mawlai wa amna Mawlai ya Ali ibn Abi Talib. ورحمة الله وبركاته. Peace and blessings be upon you, O my master, and the son of my master, Ali ibn Abi Talib. ورحمة الله وبركاته. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear brothers and sisters, for the love of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, we will begin tonight's session with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by Amir al-Mu'mineen to accept your a'mal, to accept your fasting, to accept your salat, and to allow us to reach the goals that we set for ourselves in this holy month, in the last week, or more or less 5 days of this month that are left, to make us from those who recite the Quran, live by the Quran, learn from the Quran, and I say this to myself first and foremost, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ultimately grant us the ultimate reward of this month, and that is His forgiveness. For the riwayah says, as we've said before, the one who is not given the ghufran of Allah, the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this month, is of the losers. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to make us from those who lose the ultimate gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this month, and that's ultimately His grace, His forgiveness, inshallah ta'ala. We will begin again with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allah. Jameel. Yesterday, my brothers and sisters, we discussed a very important topic. It was a two-part lecture discussing and trying to answer the question of why we worship. And after that, we segued into, if we are worshiping, are we praying? What's the distinction between the two? What's the difference between worshiping and prayer? And what is the relationship between the two? We defined worship, my brothers and sisters, as any act comprising of two conditions, or any act that holds two conditions. Number one, the act itself must be an act of humbling and submission to something or someone, the one that is worshipped. And secondly, with the belief that this thing is the ultimate source of benefit and harm for the person that is worshiping. That is the definition of worship that we more or less adopted. Jameel. Then we said prayer is defined as this action that we do 5 times a day with certain conditions, in a certain sequence, at a certain time, in a certain place, where you stand up, you put your hands to your ears, say Allahu Akbar, recite a verse from the, or verses from the Quran, chapters from the Quran, bow and prostrate, etc., etc., etc. Jameel. Jameel. And we said between the two, there's a relationship. What's that relationship? We said it's umum wa khusus mutlaq. What does that mean? Meaning every form of worship, or meaning worship always encompasses every form of prayer. Every form of prayer that we have is encompassed by this meaning, or the meaning of the title of worship, this word that we call worship. But not every worship is prayer. For there are forms of worship that are not prayer, such as sacrifice, such as giving charity, such as, in some riwayat, looking at your parents with mercy, for example, or in other religions, bowing, etc., etc. These are different types of worship, but not necessarily prayer. In Islam, we are asked to pray, not just to merely worship. Because if we were asked to merely worship, then any method, any manner of showing gratitude, as long as it fits the definition of worship, is enough. But we are asked to pray. So the question is, or the question was rather, are we worshiping, or are we praying? Are we worshiping, or are we praying? If we are just worshiping, it's not necessarily what we were asked to do. It's not going to take us far. We have to know that we are praying. And we discussed and we differentiated between the two. And then we discussed some common mistakes that people do in their salat. Jameel. Segueing from that, because we don't have much time today, we're not going to review everything we discussed. We're going to ask another question. Again, under the title of Holistic Islam, but a separate question altogether, to get your minds going, inshallah, and to sort of move away a little bit from the practical aspects that we were discussing, or the practical discussions that we were having yesterday. Question is, when we say that God does not have a son, so we don't believe that God has a son. When we say that God does not have a son, do we say it because merely our texts deny such a thing? They say that God doesn't have a son. Or is there another reason why we deny such a thing? As in, if we didn't have a text in the Quran and the scripture to say that God has a son, there's nothing to say that. Is Allah having a son something acceptable? In other words, why can't Allah have a son? Why can't God have a son? Why are we not considered to be the children of God, as you find in the Bible and in the Old Testament, specifically in the Old Testament? The children of God, where the Jews were called the children of God. Why are not God's creations God's children? Why is it so blasphemous in Islam to say that God has a son, and specifically Jesus Christ being the Son of God? Why is that something that we consider blasphemous? Why? We will discuss this, segue into this, inshallah, find sort of the middle ground and look into it through our hadith, through the Quran, and also through logic, inshallah, and ultimately arrive at the conclusion that ultimately our religion more or less presents and represents. But we want to know why. So we will begin the discussion, ask the question, explore it, inshallah, with your permission, with the permission of God. Allah salatu ala Muhammad wa ali. Let's have another one, please. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Jamil. First and foremost, let's look at where this idea finds its credibility from. As in, when you look into Christianity, the base rule or the base fundamental idea, the base idea in Christianity is that Jesus is the Son of God. And essentially, the main difference between Christianity and Judaism is the belief in Jesus Christ and the belief that he is the Son of God. As in, if you were to compare both religions, you wouldn't even call them religions. You know, more or less call Christianity a sect of Judaism. It almost seems to be this way, where this sect believes in an extra individual, extra human being who came from God, and this extra new human being is not just someone that is bringing about a new idea, rather he's fortifying what came before him. And this new individual claimed to be the Son of God. But every other aspect, or most other aspects in Christianity, are very similar to what you find in Judaism. That's why you find the Old Testament is accepted by both the New, is accepted by both the Christians and the Jews. So in one way or another, and some people have actually, speculated this or tried to present this as their finding, that Christianity is more or less a sect of Judaism with these extra things here and there, and that's pretty much what makes a sect, something different, but more or less mainstream, similar to the main idea, main religion, but separate and different with a few other concepts. Jami. The idea of God having a son is pretty much the base, the fundamental of Christianity. You also find this idea, my brothers and sisters, and some of you will be surprised, you also find this idea alluded to in Judaism, in the Talmud and other parts, where the Quran says, وَقَالَتِ الْيَهُودُ عُزَيْرُ بْنُ اللَّهِ, and the Yahud, the Jews, said Uzair is the son of God. So the Quran itself tells us that at least at one point in time, the Jews used to believe, or at least some of the Jews used to believe, that God had a son by the name of Uzair. When you go to the Talmud, you also find references of the son of the Lord, the son of gods. Some of them are descendants of other gods. Yes. So, for example, Thor, Hercules, etc., etc., etc. Not sure if Thor is, but Hercules, for example, is the son of a god. Yes. So you find this idea of God having a son is prevalent within many religions. Even some religions that came from Islam itself. Some religions that are rooted within Islam, that came from, branched off from Islam, do believe that Jesus is the Son of God. For example, Baha'ism, Al-Baha'iyyin. Baha'ism is a religion that sprouted from, essentially, from Islam, where Baha'u'llah was either a Muslim, or he pertained to Muslims, or was amongst Muslimin. In one way or another, my brothers and sisters, you find that Baha'ism is linked to Islam, and Baha'ism does believe that Jesus is the Son of God, or at least some of those that pertain to Baha'ism. So you find the idea of God having a son, God have children, is very, very prevalent. Also amongst the pagans themselves, whether the pagans that lived at the time of the Prophet ﷺ or the pagans before, did have this idea that the Malaikam, for example, may have been the children of God. The angels are the children of God, for example. Or that human beings are the children of God. So you find the idea is very prevalent. Jameel. Why is Islam so against the idea? As in, you find Islam's slogan is God has no son. And Islam's fundamental idea is that God cannot have a son. Not just that he has no son, that God cannot have a son. And there's a difference between the two statements. Saying that God does not have a son is still leaving room for God to have a son, even in the imagination. Just the potential. To say that he doesn't have a son is leaving room. Rather, Islam comes and says God cannot have a son. Allah Ta'ala says, مَا كَانَ لِلَّهِ أَنْ يَتَّخِذَ مِنْ وَلَدٍ. That God cannot have a son. Jameel. We asked the question today, why can't Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have a son? And the fact that all of these other religions do say that God has a son, does it give them credibility since they are the majority or not? Why does Islam refute the idea that God has a son? We will refute the idea, my brothers and sisters, using a method that is commonly used in the Hawza. And that is called al-hal wa naqd. The method of hal and naqd, my brothers and sisters, is extremely powerful. And by the way, these lectures that we're giving, we're not just focusing on the idea or the question, we're also focusing on the methodology. So that the methodology is sound, and that we more or less present this methodology so that it could be used in other places and other discussions that you may have, or answering other questions that you may have. So I'm not only presenting the topic, also presenting the methodology. The methodology that we're going to use is what we call al-hal and al-naqd. What's al-hal and al-naqd? Al-hal, first and foremost, is to take the idea, fragment it, analyze it to a degree where you've dissolved it, to find the problem, to find the cancer within the issue, and to pinpoint it and say, oh, here's the problem. So to logically take the issue, fragment it, dissolve it, look into it deeply to find where the problem is, where the kink in the chain is, and ultimately to show the problem for what it is. So to say God has a son, or say God cannot have a son for X reasons, and in that logic, you show where the problem is when it comes to God having a son. An-naqd is where you present an example that is accepted by the opposition, accepted by the other side, and that very example contradicts the claim that they are making. That very example contradicts the claim that they are making. So I'll give you an example of hal and naqd. Common example that I like to use with some of the students here in the Hawza. Let's say I made a claim that a Ford Fusion is faster than a Lamborghini. A Ford or car made by Ford is faster than a Lamborghini. Like, you can come forward and show me hal and naqd, or use hal and naqd to refute this idea. Through hal, you can say, well, the Ford has a V6 engine, while the Lamborghini has a V10 engine. The Lamborghini has a bigger engine than the Ford. For this reason, logically, it makes no sense for the Ford to be faster, because it does not have the prerequisites, does not have the features to make it faster than Lamborghini. That's hal. You used the logic. You used logic. And you showed me why that claim is wrong and baseless. How do you use hal? You'll come forward and say, look at the stats for Lamborghini versus Ford. The top speed of this Ford car is 300 kilometers an hour. We use kilometers here in Canada, by the way. Lamborghini uses a top speed at 500. That is naqd. You showed me the example. You said this is an example from a book that you have, that you accept. This book that you accept to be accurate is telling you that the Ford tops out at 300 while the Lamborghini tops out at 5. For example, and this is a very, very simple example. And even if there's debate with the example, we say la niqash fil mithal. Regardless, this is the method that we are going to use. And I ask you, my brothers and sisters, to adopt this methodology, because it's the most academic method to refute and to discuss. طيب, when it comes to God having a son, as for al-hal, we say this. We say that when we say God has a son, what are we essentially saying? We are saying that God created another being. God created a being through a specific process. And that process, the result of that process is what you call a son. When I say God has a son, what does it essentially mean? It means two things. It means that, number one, God created another being. God created a being. Number one. And number two, that this being was created in a process, in a different process, in which the product of said process is what you call a son. This is what we agree on. طيب, what's the process by which the product of that process is what you call a son, offspring, the process of begetting. The process of begetting. And you find in the Bible, John 3:16, famous quote. What does it say? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. The process of begetting. Jameel. So the product is the son. The process is the process of begetting. طيب, let's define begetting. What does it mean to beget? Begetting, my brothers and sisters, is defined as this. Typically of a man, sometimes of a man and a woman, bringing a child into existence by the process of reproduction. Essentially, sexual reproduction. What is it? Sexual reproduction. Jameel. So, for me to say that I have a son, there are two implications. Number one is that this son is, in one way or another, created by me, brought into the world of existence by me. Jameel. The second implication is that this son came about through the process of begetting. Question. Is begetting, this process, an attribute of animals, or is it the attribute of a deity, of a god? Go to biology. Forget philosophy. Go to biology. Animals procreate through the process of sexual reproduction, where two animals come together and they produce a third. This process of begetting is an attribute specific to animals. Even other living organisms don't create through the process of sexual reproduction. They create through asexual reproduction, through etc. Yes? So you find the process of begetting is an attribute of animals. Forget human beings, animals. By saying God begets, you have put God on the same playing field as human beings. What's the problem with that? Number one, the problem with that is we've humanized God. Again, what did we say? Human beings naturally humanize God, which means there's no credibility for all of those other religions that come forward and claim God to have a son. Why? Because their claim comes from the natural instinct of human beings to humanize God. So the fact that the majority of religions comes and calls for this does not give them credibility, because it's just a natural inclination that we have to humanize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number one, that's the first problem. Number two, God does not create through a process. To say that God creates through the process of human beings is humanizing him, yes, but we all know what the process of creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, the process by which he creates. How does God create? He says, be, and it is. Kun fayakun. The process by which God creates is not through begetting. The process by which God creates is command, be, and it is. He does not need a process, my brothers and sisters. Why? Because he has full control of the universe. Why do I need a process to do something? I'll give you an example of what I'm trying to say. A process, my brothers and sisters, is essentially steps for you to arrive at a result. That's what a process is. The process of making a cake is you get the flour, you get the chocolate. I'm not a cook, but you get the mix and you do something and then you end up with a cake. Like, there's a process. You have to take this mix and you put it in the oven, and then you put the oven to whatever, and then finally you have a cake. You can't just say, I want cake, and alhamdulillah, cake is in front of you. No, there's a process. Like, are you able to get cake without the process? No, a prerequisite for the cake is the process. God doesn't have a process. When it comes to just creation out of nothing, just merely creation, he does not have a process. Yes, the way he created me and you and some things in the universe, sure, there's a process. There's a wisdom behind that process. But if God wants to create Jesus Christ, God wants to create a human being out of thin air. Does he need a process? No. Being it is. There's no begetting that needs to happen. This process of begetting ultimately limits God. Ultimately limits Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why you find in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ما كان لله أن يتخذ من ولد. It does not make sense for God to have a child. Subhanahu. Exalted is he. What does subhanahu mean? What does exalted he means? Exalted is he means that he is higher than such a thing. His level is higher than to be compared to human beings and put on their same playing field. And the same playing field as human beings. To be brought down to their level. Exalted, higher is he. إِذَا قَضَى أَمْرًا فَإِنَّمَا يَقُولُ لَهُ كُنْ. If he desires something, all he has to say is kun fayakun. The process by which God creates is not begetting. The process by which God creates is kun fayakun. Be and it is. Subhanallah. How Allah Ta'ala takes all of what we just said for the last 20 minutes, puts it in one ayah. And that itself, my brothers and sisters, is so beautiful. So beautiful. How all of what we just said is put in one ayah. Jameel. This is hal. What about naqad? An example. Examples. Go to the Quran. I don't have to tell you anything. Go to the Quran. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say in Surah Al Imran? Inna mathala Isa and Allah kamathali Adam. The example of Isa with God is the example of Adam. Same as Adam. خَلَقَهُ مِن تُرَابٍ ثُمَّ قَالَ لَهُ كُنْ فَيَكُونُ. Created him from clay, from dirt, and said to him, be, and he was. طيب. Let's see the beginning. Let's analyze the beginning. The example of Isa with Allah is the example of Adam. طيب, let's analyze Adam for a second. Let's analyze Adam and let's also analyze Jesus. Let's analyze Adam first. Adam was created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, we all agree. طيب, how was he created? Did he have a father? Did he have a mother? No, Adam was the first man on earth. Jami. Adam was the first man on earth. He had no father, no mother. And he is just a normal human being, whether he is a prophet or not, in accordance to our fellow brothers and sisters from, the fellow Christians, whether they consider him to be a prophet or not, fine, no problem. But he's a normal human being at the very least. At the very least, he's a human being. Let's say he's a prophet. Let's go up there and say he's a prophet. He's a prophet of God. He's the son of God. No one claims Adam is the son of God. No one claims him to be. Even the Jews said Uzair is the son of God, not even Adam. So no one's even going close to the idea that Adam is the son of God. Jameel. He has no father, no mother. Go to Jesus Christ, Nabi Isa alayhi salam. Why was he called the son of God? Because he only has a mother. Meaning, the place of the father is empty. Therefore, you have to fill God as the father. Then with Adam, why didn't we come and say that Adam has both, a mother and a father, and both of them are God? Or we've humanized God even further and gave him a gender and said, no, he can't be the mother of Adam. Okay, no, don't put him as the mother of Adam. Put him as just the father of Adam. Oh no, but if he's the father of Adam, he must have a mother. Why are you creating for this? Why are we creating for ourselves this loophole? Why are we creating for ourselves this turmoil? The same way we did not claim Jesus or Adam alayhi salam to be the son of God, although he's missing both parents. Then why do we have to claim that Jesus Christ is the son of God and he only has one? As in, creating with no parents is harder than to create when you have one of the two partners there. So what shows the magnificence of God is the creation of Adam more so than the creation of Jesus Christ, in accordance to their logic. Here you presented an example that is accepted by the other side. They accept Adam to be of no father, no mother. And the example of Adam ultimately contradicts the claim for Jesus Christ. Other such examples is the staff of Moses, the snake of Moses. Does it have a father? Does it have a mother? No, came from a piece of wood. Like it was created. Why did you accept that this snake is not the son or the daughter of God? I don't know what gender it was. It's not the offspring of God. has no parents. It has no parents that came before. It came from a staff, came from wood. Put that aside. What about the camel of Salih? The camel of Salih has no parents. It's not an offspring of anything, therefore it has to be the offspring of God. Eve, same thing, did not come from another human being. And oh, by the way, this idea that Eve came from the rib of Adam is not accepted with the Shias. So we don't accept it. We believe that they were both created in the same process. Not that Eve was taken from the rib of Adam. We don't believe this in the Shia faith. Jameel. So you found that there are many examples of things that were created directly by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and no one ever has claimed that they are the children of God. Furthermore, al-malaika. Al-malaika were at one point by some, wallahu al-alim, claimed to be the children, the offspring of God. But nobody from the Christian side or from the Jewish side claims that they are the children of God. Although it was a claim that was found before. In accordance to the logic that was given to Jesus Christ, that same logic should have been given and applying to the angels and the staff and Eve and etc., etc., etc. All these other examples, they fit the same criteria, yet nobody claims them to be the children of God. For us to claim that Jesus Christ is the child of God, the offspring of God, because of said criteria, all of these things also must be the children of God in the very same way. And so you find, my brothers and sisters, this idea of God having a son is baseless. Why is it accepted? Why is it accepted? Because it's fueled with emotion. Because it's fueled with emotion. Because it's fueled with God giving his only son to human beings. He was put on the cross and was killed. The idea is emotionally charging. It charges us. And human beings, when we are emotionally charged, we accept. We accept things as fact because we're so emotionally charged. Such things are the exaggerations that sometimes we ourselves see. We ourselves see. This alim, this scholar, mathalan, this person is known to do these different types of miracles. And it's just accepted. Like, he himself says, I don't do these things. But because we want to link to the supernatural realm so much, and we're so emotionally fueled by the supernatural realm, and it gives us our own value and more or less gives us our identity, we are so easily accepting of such a thing when it comes to us. Not that miracles don't happen, but this very same person is telling you, I have not done this. Writes in his book, these are lies. But we still accept them. And we say that these are facts. Like, why? Or they're widespread and known. Like, why? Because of this emotional aspect that we have to our religion, this emotional connection that we have to our religion. Same thing has happened here. Same exact thing. It's emotionally charged. Emotionally charged. And when emotions are at play, the intellect is not in the forefront. And that same filtering ability is not there anymore. And so ideas like this become the fundamental ideas behind religion. Yet they're so easily refutable. So easily refutable. And other ideas like it. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم أسأله تعالى أن يعفو عنا ويغفر لنا ويرحمنا إنه نعم المولى ونعم النصير وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين.